Hey everyone, welcome back to the ACP-620 study sessions. We got Rodney in the house today. Wife doesn't have to fill in. Make sure you hit this. Oh boy, I can't even speak correctly anymore. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button, and let us know who's here, who's watching, where you all tuning in from, and when are you signing up for the ACP-620? Because I just signed up for it, Rodney, and it is on the books for June 14th. Not realizing that it's the week of Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to me.
Happy Father's Day. Let me study.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I'm taking care of it on Saturday, right? So I'll do Disneyland on Friday. ACP, hopefully, fingers crossed, on Saturday, and then Father's Day on Sunday.
You know you're going to ace it. Don't give me that.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I know. I know.
All right, so we're gonna continue our journey on automation rules. Where I realize we're not halfway through because there's an all hidden section. I'm like, my gosh, these things take forever. So let's do creating complex automation rules with smart values and branches. And let me just start this off by saying that this is game changing stuff here. The moment I discovered branches and smart values, that changed the game for me.
Absolutely. This takes what you can do with automation to a whole nother level. While I've got a moment here, chat, you've got to tell me, it's on my to watch list, but I haven't quite got to it yet. How many
Cobalt,
tangents did Alex get off to on Tuesday when I was gone?
not that well. I would say I got enough, but I was also educating the wife because she's never built an automation rule before. So we were kind of helping out from that respect. I was kind of guiding her on automation rules because my wife's very heavily invested right on robo agents, and so I feel like automation rules are like the precursor to robo agents, right? The closest thing you're
That's
getting to
fair.
coding back then, and now robo agents. So I was giving her a little bit of history and showing her how things work there. But it was
That's
good.
fair.
I didn't get as much. I didn't get as far as I thought I would have gotten without Rodney's distractions. So I'm a little bummed there. But let's see if we can't power
So I'm
through.
helpful.
I would say, yeah, like I said, I got one more module than I thought I was gonna get, but one less than I was hoping to get. So somewhere in the middle. All right. So what are smart values? So smart values are variables. So if you've ever written any code before, it's literally it kind of looks like a variable, and you put these values in curly braces, and and they basically do magical things, like very magical things.
Hmm.
And there's a whole list, which I'm sure we're going to cover at some point. But they basically allow you to access and manipulate data without using like hard coded values. So it's really powerful in the extension that it gives you. So you can call things out like as we get over here, right? You can get things like the comment body. You can get things like the summary of an issue. You can get basically any field inside of a Jira issue. You can reference it. So a really good common use case that I like to do, or that some teams ask me, when a child is created, they want to like append or indicate the epic's title in that summary of that child. So I can run an automation rule that basically grabs the parent's summary and sticks it as a summary or appends it as a summary of that child's summary. That's way too many times of the use the word summary, but hopefully you all get the idea of what you can do with these smart values. Now, they're kind of there's a lot of smart values, and accessing the custom fields is just one of them. And Ronnie, have you seen this feature? Sarah showed it to us, Sarah from our team, and this is pretty cool. So what you can do, and I'm gonna go back to the old UI because folks, I still do not like the new UI. But what you can do, if because you're probably asking yourself like, what are these smart values? There's a lot of smart values. There's a lot. Trust me when I tell you, there's a lot of smart values. But what you can do here is when you are like setting a field here. Let's just grab something here. There's this little curly brace button that you can click on, and then Jira has like a catalog slash index of all the available smart values that are available. The other Rodney says it would be great if Atlassian would give us the assets. Yeah, I'm taking this as a win right here, Ronnie, because this didn't exist, I don't know, 6, 8 months ago. And so the fact that we have this is kind of cool. But I think they might have some maybe advanced format. I thought I saw assets somewhere once. Might be wrong. But there's a lot of different cool things that you can go look at. There's some lookup objects, guard detect alerts, fields changes, regular objects, Workday, Confluence, and so there's all kinds of smart values here. And all you gotta do is like click into it, and then you'll see the code. You can see the code here, and then you can just copy this, and then you can paste it over here, and then use it in your automation. So it's kind of cool that from that perspective. Some of the more common ones here are like time. So this one's kind of cool if you want to like timestamp something, like with now, like put the date and time and like when did something enter in progress, where you can create a custom field that when you move it to in progress, you can slap it with the now and find that out. Although I would, in this particular case, in that particular example, I would strongly encourage that you use a workflow property, because those are going to be better for you than using up on automation for that. You can also send emails to people, right? So you can see who triggered an email and send them an email. You can also do some basic arithmetic. So this is kind of cool. So this allows you to, like, there's an automation rule that comments back to a customer, notifying them that your team will address the problem within 3 business days. And so you can figure out what 3 business days is by simply doing the like today, now, and add 3 days to a business day, so that you don't include Saturday and Sunday. That's kind of cool. This is one that I use a lot. So I work with a team that uses their comment section as like a status update. But as you may or may not know, comments can't be visually seen in the in the list view or in the Jira Advanced Roadmap. And so this is a really cool way to just take the latest comment body and add it to like a single a small text field, and then that you can display. So that's kind of a use case for that. But in the chat, what are some of the uses that you've had for smart values? What about you, Ronnie? What have you done smart values for?
I said I've done a lot of the grab the epic name or epic summary and bring it down to the children and grandchildren of an issue. Work item. I've done a lot of things with dates. People want a date in. Customizing comments. People want a comment automatically added when certain events happen, but they want it to reflect specific data. Like this issue number is moved into this status at this time. Just really digging into that. But smart values, as said, the list is always changing. When they first introduced them, always growing. When they first introduced them, there was like 5. And that's all you had.
Yeah.
And it was still game changing.
Yeah. So let's look at an example. So Danica is a project admin for a company managed project, also maintains a Confluence space for that project. I think the only real difference that I would see right now, just not knowing too much, is that in company managed projects, because you can have custom fields that are, custom, that are searchable custom fields, you can actually, each custom field has a unique ID. And in the smart value, you can actually reference that unique ID. I don't know if we'll see it here, but I would say when you're when you're trying to balance out custom fields and team managed versus company managed, that's one thing to keep in note, that you can technically access company managed custom fields in your automation rules. Right, so her team has a communication problem in the past, and she wants to automate notifying users when someone comments on their content. In Jira, Danica would like to notify her team work item reporter when someone comments on the work, and in Confluence, she would like to notify the page creator when someone comments. So let's see. Configure the rule details. So Danica will create 2 separate automation rules, one for Jira, one for Confluence. Okay. Going to select the trigger. In Jira, work item is commented. These are one of the many triggers out there. And in Confluence, the trigger will be page commented. Then we want to do conditions, because she does not want the work item reporter or the page owners to be notified of their own comments. So what they're going to do is they're going to put some conditions here, and your first value is going to be comment author. So you can see everything in bold here is going to be a smart value. So we can access who is the author of that comment. You can do a condition that is not equal, and then we're looking for the reporter. So as long as the person that added a comment is not the reporter, then do something. And then we have an action. So what is that something? So in this particular case, we're going to take the reporter's email and we're going to write them an email and tell them, here's the key, here's the author, and here's the comment that was written. And so as you can see, you can access like parts of the data, if you will, in your automation rules. And you can, and what's kind of cool, in case you missed it, in case you weren't paying attention, is that these smart values work from a trigger perspective, right? So you can, conditions perspective, I should say, where you're actively checking to see if a value in a smart value meets a certain criteria condition, and then you can take action on the more data as well. So very powerful stuff. And then you can test it out, right, by being the reporter, and it shouldn't get an email, and then you do one where you're not the reporter and you should get the email. So those are some checks there. Now,
that is
branches.
an important point. Always test before you just trust something's going to work, especially in a production environment.
Oh yeah. Branches. So smart values are cool, and if you're new to this whole thing, I would start with smart values because smart values are much easier to understand. Because at the end of the day, they're just a variable. They're just a variable that accesses part of the data, right? So when you look at your issue or your work item as a whole, right? When you look at the whole the whole thing as a, just one entity, you can think of, the summary as one accessible piece of data, the reporter, the comment, the due date, all of the fields within the ticket are pieces of variables and data that you can grab and do something with your automation rules. Okay, so I think the context from smart values is pretty easy to describe. Branches, however, those are hard. These are complex. This is not.
Yeah.
You don't want to be doing this after 1 or 2 beers. I can tell you that much.
I don't know. Maybe you're one of those weird programmers that do better when you're a little buzzed.
You ever hear of programming?
I think I have.
Programming was like starting up when I was in college getting my CS degree. And the whole premise was like, for every 10 lines of code that you write, you take a shot and then you do like 10 push-ups.
It sounds vaguely like a old XKCD commercial, or not commercial, comic from about 15, 20 years ago that had a similar premise.
That would have been around the same time that I got my CS degree. So yeah. It's probably around the same time frame. But yeah, so let's not get into programming. All right, so create branches within an automation rule. So what is a branch? So a branch acts as an independent subrule within automations. It runs conditions and actions on multiple related branch work items. Branches are optional. You can use multiple branches in a rule. For example, in Jira, you want to create an automation rule that identifies, whoa, my desk just started moving on me. In Jira, you want to create an automation rule that identifies when a work item has a new comment, then adds that same comment to their parent epic. And so you start by configuring the main automation rule with the work item comment trigger, and then add a JQL. So MP Marty says that this is their thing. Summary has issue key, subtask for transfer in. Well, what are we doing here? This looks like some SQL stuff at this point.
I mean, makes sense.
No, it definitely makes sense, but I don't write JQLs that complex. I'm not I use the in a lot, but not that way. That's a little bit more complex. So MP, kudos. That's what is that in plain text? What does that do? Can you think of a branch more like a subflow routine? I don't know that that's how I would classify it though.
I think it's more closer to like a for loop.
I don't even think I would. I think honestly, the best way that I would describe a branch is like a coding branch, like in Subversion or Git, right? Because what happens is, like, this is why branches get very confusing. Is you start in, like, something's gonna trigger your automation rule, right? And so you are in that automation rule. Let's just say it's a story, right? And so you can go into that story because that's the trigger. So you're working out of that story. So when you do issue.summary, you're grabbing the summary of that story, right? But then you can branch. And so you can branch to the parent, which means you physically move to the parent. So now when you do issue.summary, you're no longer in that child's story. You're now in the parent. And so you kind of you're moving physically, in my opinion. So this is why I would attribute it more to like a Git branch where you physically move over to another branch because you're no longer working on that other, or maybe even Avengers branches and timelines.
That's a fair comparison, but I'm thinking a situation where like you're doing something across like all an issue's children. And in that case, it acts a little bit more like for loop than just a pure branch. But when
That
you
is
move into
true.
like,
yeah, no, I can see that too. But I kind of still feel that my analogy for that for each, you kind of branch and branch and branch and branch for each available branch available in the branch tree.
And that is also a fair comparison. Because there are
recursion.
times where like if I move a child in progress, I want to move the parent in progress as well. You're going to use a branch for that as well.
Yeah, because you got to go find the parent and then move that parent over to in progress. But then when you go the other route, right? If you're gonna go find all the children and update the children, like if you move the epic to done and you want all the stories to go to done as well, like it's a for loop because you will go through each child and update its status.
And by the way, that is a terrible way to do things. If anything, you should be blocking the epic from moving to done until all the children are done.
I'm just saying, man. I'm throwing examples out there.
Oh, that's the example I thought of too. I'm just like, that's a great example. That is a terrible best practice.
All right. So we have a JQL that says parent is not empty. So then you'd configure a branch rule to add a branch. There are different kinds of branch rules available. So let's take a look at what's available. So we have advanced branching, allows you to enter a smart value and perform actions on a value as an object. So for example, trigger work item. Your branch can perform actions for each comment on the trigger work item. We have related rules, so we can look at subtasks, we can look at the parent, we can look at the children. Some other common ones that I can see is most recently created work item. I've used that a lot because sometimes you have an automation rule that creates like a subtask, right? And so step one is create the subtask, and then you can go branch into that most recently created subtask and then do something on that subtask. So you don't have to do like two automation rules, like you can nest it in there in one. I've also done the linked work items because what it does is it lets you go find the relationship that's linked. So for example, you can find any issue that is blocked by the trigger, and then you can go do things there too. Here's some of the branching options in Confluence. So I've never actually explored Confluence, but it looks like you can do a very similar thing where you're getting the trigger page comments body. You're looking for inactive page. You're looking for each page owned by a deactivated account. So I'm getting cleanup vibes here, right? Like a lot of helpful things for cleaning up stuff in Confluence. You're finding related items that find based on the CQL. You can go find JQL stuff. So that's interesting. You can page branch applies the same condition or an action up to 1,000 pages that meet your criteria. And a task branch applies the same condition up to 1,000 tasks. I did not know that. So have you ever written any Confluence automation rules?
Once, and it was more to test it and get a feel for it than actually do anything productive.
Yeah, I don't ever actually go to Confluence. I mean, I've done 1,000 Jira ones, but hardly ever do I go do Confluence ones.
You were about to say I just don't go to Confluence, and I was about to say our scripts are well aware of this.
Shut up. Shut up. I prefer Excel. All right. When would you use branch rules? So branch rules extend the power of automation rules. Let's explore several use cases. First, you decide that all stores within your project should have a parent epic. You can create an automation rule that automatically adds comments to all work items in the project that violate this policy. This will notify all watchers of your work items. So how do you configure this rule? So you're going to manually trigger this rule, okay? And then you're going to run. So this is a branch, this purple indicator here. Purple, is this purple or pink, Ronnie? I'm going on purple.
That's purple.
Yeah, this purple indicator here is your branch. And you can also see it here. We branched out. And the best part that I like about this is you kind of see it just like the way I described it. in Git, right? Like this is kind of how Git works. And so you're gonna do a branch, and you're gonna basically look. Here's our for loop. So you're gonna iterate through every item in here. Now, there is a caveat. I don't know if Atlassian is gonna tell you here, but I don't even know if you know this, Rodney. But there's like a caveat of like 1,000 returned items.
Yeah.
So I've seen this phenomenon where your JQL brings back like, I don't know, 2,500 items, and then you're like, it works, but it's intermediate, and like my automation rule kind of sometimes works, but a lot of issues are being left out. It's because you hit the limit. You can only do this on 1,000. So make sure that whenever you're doing your for loops, the whatever's being returned is less than 1,000. And another thing that I'll see is that at the beginning, maybe you have like maybe your for loop returns like 10 items, but then over 6 months, your for loop starts returning 10,000 items, and again, you're gonna lose 9,000 of them. So at the beginning, during your initial testing, it might work out, but later on, as users create more and more and more and more and more work, your JQL, you might need to update your JQL to refine that scope again. So anyways, it's gonna go find everything where and it's funny that they used Epic Link. I would have just used parent, right? Like Epic Link's not a thing anymore.
They at least updated it with work type, though. That's the
I know.
thing.
That's the funny part. Why would you do that? Why would you go through the effort to update the screenshot only to still have the screenshot outdated?
They just missed it because Epic Link to parent wasn't as big an advertised change as issue type to work type.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, though, I mean, you still use the Epic Link. The Epic Link is still in play, but boy, oh boy, did they try to hide it. What did completely die, though, is the Epic name.
Good riddance.
Good riddance. All right, so here's another example. You want to automatically mark epics done when look at this. Isn't this something similar to what we're talking about? So you would when a work item is transitioned to done, you're gonna go find its parent. So again, you have now shifted whatever triggered you to go to done, that story that went to done, you're no longer in that story. You have now shifted to the parent. And this trips a lot of people up when I'm working with branches, because they still think that they're working off the parent, and they go back and check and see, why is the parent not doing what I'm telling it to do, or the story or the child or whatever, because your branch has moved you. Your branch is now, the scope has changed, and so all these things is now happening on that parent, not on that initial work item that triggered it.
All right, I think
yes, Felicia,
these two conditions though are really what tells, because on its own it sounds like a terrible best practice, but the second condition specifically, I think, is the teller that makes it okay.
You want to make sure that all the children match done.
So if you run this and there are, say, 2 children stories, one of them's done, one of them's not, it's going to cancel the run right there, and nothing's going to happen.
That's what makes it okay for Ronnie. I like to know where Ronnie's moral lines are. Chat says, I've tried, and that's where I ran into branch issues. So hence the question above. Yeah, you gotta, chat, these branching things, the best way to do it is to just practice them and try them until you visually in your mind can see the branch. That's like, you gotta know, maybe even draw it out. I've done that before.
Absolutely draw it out.
Yeah, you're the project admin for the security. Oh, use a log. You can use your log too, because what I do is I export out I write to the log the summary or the issue type, right? And then it'll give you insight as to where you're at. So take advantage of the log, of that work log entry that you can do, so you can visually see what the heck is happening in your rule. All right, so you're the project admin of the security team. You want all bugs in your project to have a security bug label so they appear in your company-wide bug reports and dashboards. You want all bugs in your team to be automatically assigned to your team lead. How do you do this? Well, you are gonna, when an item's created and if it equals a bug, then for this particular item, labels contains, if this label isn't there, we're gonna add the label. I don't know that and then for this particular item, I don't know that I would, this is overly complicated. I don't know that I would have branched to do this. I would have just added the label if it didn't exist and added the assignee. Maybe you have to branch in order to do both, but I feel like I wouldn't have. I feel like I would have just done
That's
2 then statements here.
yeah. I think what they're doing with this branch is just running these 2 sets of actions in parallel.
But I would have simply just said, if it's a bug condition, does the bug contain this label? No, then add it. Then
it's just not going to run the second part at all.
Because of a second condition.
Yeah.
Unless you put an if statement, but you could do an if statement that says if or this, then that.
And that's probably what I would have done. But I'm just saying, I see what they were doing here. I see the logic behind it. Branch may not be the best tool, but
they're stretching.
I can see what they were trying to do.
They're stretching.
They needed a third example. That's really what the case was.
Gunnar is a project admin. He wants to. By the way, I started missing the one thing that did happen is this whole 11 series of sessions that we've been doing here. By the way, shout out to our sponsor Revyz for making this episode possible. 26 minutes into this. Make sure you check out Revyz down on the link in the description below and back up your Jira today. Especially when you make mistakes with your automation rules and bad things happen to your Jira tickets, you're going to want to be able to back that up and, restore back from a good copy of your Jira ticket. So make sure you check out Revyz down in the description down below. Okay. Anyway, so 11 sessions into this, I haven't missed a single question, and then you leave and I miss like 2. So you need a D to pass the ACP though, so I'm feeling good still.
As I said, you've got this.
Okay. Gunnar is a project admin. He wants to add story points after a sprint and then receive an email with the total. Let's consider several components of the automation rule Gunnar can use to meet this requirement. What's the best trigger? Not manual, so we can eliminate that one. I would say not scheduled either, because that would come. I mean, you typically start a sprint.
If you're religious about starting and stopping your sprint on time, you might be able to schedule, but the moment you don't, you miss a day, whatever, it's going to cause problems.
Yeah. So we have sprint field completed. Now this is interesting because he wants to add story points after a sprint. So basically the sprint has completed, so that's a good one. And then we have the field value change trigger, which I don't think would be a good one either, because the sprint field value when you complete the sprint doesn't change on you. No, I think it's going to be sprint completed. Dun, dun, dun. All right, Gunnar's back at it again. He wants to add... Wait, we did this one already. What can the... Okay, so I guess it's the same rule, but now we got to go over to what can Gunnar add to the automation rule to identify work in each recently completed sprint. So we can do a lookup. We can do a JQuery. I don't think we would do this one, and we will not do this one. So really, is it a lookup or is it a JQuery? Which I kind of feel like the JQuery in itself is a lookup.
It is, but it's a little more flexible, and I think it'd probably be better for this situation.
Yeah, because finding in JQL, finding your completed sprint, I don't think it's going to be as intuitive. I think the lookup is going to give you more explicit text. So let's go with that one. Again, I think JQL would have worked in this particular case, but you have to be more creative with the JQL on that one. And I think with the lookup, it's more of a drop down. Like you're going to pick the most recent sprint or something.
I like being creative with JQL.
I don't. All right. So same story again, but what can Gunnar add to the automation rule to get the sum? And so we're going to, is it a JQL? Is it a smart value? It's definitely not the auto log. I don't think it's going to be this one. So I think we're between.
It could be D. If you set all the work items story points to 0, you then know the sum.
I feel like this should have been I feel like this needed to have been a for, like a for loop.
Yeah.
How do you get the sum of them all? I feel like you need to do the JQL within the branch. And so
I think this one's a smart value.
You think so? You think that there's a
I seem to remember there being an appendage.
Now that you bring that up, there is a sum function inside that wasn't covered in this test. So yeah, you could do story points.sum. Yeah, now that you bring that up, I think you're right. There it is. Look up work items story points.sum. Good call, Rodney. Next time, just be at the test with me. Imagine if you could take the test collaboratively. Pair programming.
Pair certification.
All right. And now for the title of today's episode, Automation Rules Best Practices. What are some of them? Let's find out. So to simplify your experience when creating and managing your automation rules, follow these simple best practices. Test your rules before you implement them.
Didn't we just mention this one?
Not only that, but again, I feel like we're going to have to mention Revyz here for the next 20 minutes, folks. So for the next 20 minutes, bear with us. But test your rules away from your production environment. Don't test in production whenever you can avoid it. And if you are going to test in production, you want to use Revyz to back up your data in case things go south on you and you can restore.
But here's the deal. I mean, absolutely get Revyz anyways. It's going to save you eventually. But here's the deal. Even if you don't have a sandbox, you could get a 10-person Jira instance for your personal use for free.
Yep. Now, here's the other deal. If you go down that route, or even if you go down the sandbox route, Revyz can also basically move your automation rule over from the sandbox to production or from that other Jira to production. And so take advantage of that capability and that feature because you could test it. The worst thing that can happen is you can do it and test it and build the best automation rule in your sandbox or in a different Jira. But the devil's in the details, my friends. And if you don't recreate it in production the exact same way, then you're going to put yourself in an interesting situation. So again, Revyz lets you move them for you without manually redoing things. So take advantage of that. What else have we got, Rodney?
Validate step by step.
Build the rule slowly, step by step. Yeah, so I like, this is how I used to approach coding because I sucked as a developer, but sometimes you get so excited. Sometimes you get so excited and you build this massive automation rule and it doesn't work. And you're like, shoot, where did it break? And I'm like, well, you should have just started with do a simple check, right? Make sure that one piece of it works. Don't get so excited and do, because you can put up to 60 elements inside of an automation rule. Don't get excited and do all 60 in one shot. Do the trigger, do an action. Does that work? Are we triggering correctly? Right? Do we even get into the rule? Right? Then can we do something? Can we transition? Can we update? Right? Because you're going to be able to start narrowing it down because guess what, folks? Your automation rules still have to respect your permission scheme. And so if you're trying to transition something and the actor doesn't have the permission to transition, your automation rule is not going to do anything. It might still be able to edit because that's a different permission, but you might not be able to transition. So check those things, right? And you won't know if you throw 50 things at it. Mm-hmm. Don't assign work items. Don't assign work while testing rules. If I've been in this one before. I would say don't follow this rule. I would say give the person you're going to be testing with a heads up, or test with yourself, or test with a trusted colleague that is preferably on the call with you, because there will be a moment where you are going to have to test these assignment stuff. And so you can either A, assign things to yourself, or B, and let that other person you're going to be using as a guinea pig know, because otherwise it will confuse them. But I wouldn't say don't not do this.
DC, data center, what we used to do is on our test instance, we just entirely disable outbound email to prevent this. So you could test your heart contents anything you want on Sandbox without an issue. I don't remember 100% for sure if we have a similar functionality in cloud.
You can disable disable outbound email in cloud.
But that's only if you have Sandbox. If you're having to test on like a test project in production, definitely follow this rule.
Yep. Conditions enable you to limit actions to your specific use cases. Again, very similar to that second one. Baby steps here, folks. Get strategic. Hey, log your action. This a fun little fact. I'm pretty sure this is still true, but Atlassian does not. If you make an automation rule where all you're doing is writing to the log, it doesn't count against your usage. Jay, I think it's 60. I don't think it's 65, but I think it's 60. But does anybody know what's Ronnie? I think it's 60, right? How many?
I
don't know,
think it's 60.
I'm pretty sure it's 60.
I know I've gotten in trouble with this where someone wanted enough actions that I actually had to cascade the automation across several rules. Me and them had a nice long talk about this is a shared resource.
Oh, 65. No, it's definitely 65. Jay, you're right. Well, I mean, this is AI. Let me see if I can find an Atlassian documentation. Because I don't trust AI all the time. Cloud only, yep, 65 components. Your trigger counts, I think, and your conditions count. Everything counts.
Yep.
Every little box in there counts. All right. Use that log auction because it won't count against your usage. Understand your auto log. I don't know about you, Rodney, but they made this auto log so freaking hard to understand. When you click on this, well, let's go to a rule that has run successfully, which I don't think I'm going to have one. Yeah, I don't think I have one in here. But when you go to your audit log now and you look at these, like you have to expand things now. Like I liked it better when they expanded it because over here is the action that was taken. And way the hell over here on the right-hand side is a little plus button to expand that. And it's really easy because there's a bunch of expand. It's really easy to get like your eyes cross-eyed and not click on the right expansion. So I'm not a big fan of how they do it in the new UI for this. Have you seen that?
This is my first time seeing the UI with automation.
Oh
I
yeah,
know when you have like a lot of executions on your automation, finding the specific one where it went wrong, especially if it's a couple of days ago, yeah, it's a mind-numbing search.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can. I'm gonna see if I can show you what this looks like because it is annoying. Well, here's an auto log. Let's just grab. Nope, that was no actions performed. Let's do one that successfully ran. Here we go. So when you go to this run, you see you have what happened, but to see the actual thing, you have to swing yourself all the way over here, and you gotta like pray and hope that you click on the right one to then see that data. They used to just give it to you like this so you could see the whole thing, but I don't know. Atlassian efficiencies, right? You gotta bring back less data from the server. All right. Validate your rules against using the notify on error setting. Use the notify on error setting to validate your rules once you've successfully enabled them. This basically gives you an email if it ever starts failing later in life. Monitor who can create. So this is a good one only because you have usage limits now. Then you might want to control your people that are too liberal with automation rules.
There is a best practice they did not have on that list.
What's that?
Always use a either account you control or better yet, like a bot account, some sort of automation account to run your automations rather than have the actor be someone in the organization. Because the moment they leave, that automation breaks.
Oh yeah, it does. I've seen that many a times. Which now brings us to how do you troubleshoot all this crap? If your rule's not running at all, is it enabled? I've seen that many times where you get lost in the sea of copies of copies of copies. You turn on the wrong one, you turn off the right one, and it's just a mess. Triggers, folks. The trigger, I think, is still the hardest part about automation rules. Are you triggering based on the right trigger? Is that trigger event happening? I think a lot of people make assumptions and stuff, and you got to check that trigger. And then also the scope, is it configured to run in your project? This one's very common because especially when you follow the templates that Atlassian gives you, those are project specific. But if you're in one project and you're expecting it to run in a different project, it's not going to do it if you don't have it over there. Some actions are being performed, but not all. What's the status of the rule execution? So sometimes what's interesting is sometimes it'll crap out, but it successfully ran because it did the thing, but then it didn't add the comment or something. And so it is possible for the actual action to work, but just not the comment. You check your audit log. that's a great way to go find out what's actually happening. Are your conditions being met? Which again, the audit log is going to tell you. Are you using multiple conditions or an if-else block? Because I've actually had this problem where the order of your conditions matter, and like if you don't set it up with the right order, like it won't run. Does the rule actor have the current permissions, right? So we've talked about this one a lot, right? Like your actor, the rules, the permission will supersede everything. So make sure you get that correct. Or change your actor, or change your permission scheme. Some work items are being processed, but not all. So do they all meet the conditions or not? Does your rule use JQL? And remember, we were talking about the JQL also has a limit of 1,000. So if your thing's coming back on number 1001, you're not going to get hit. It's not going to work. Let's explore an example. So Tara created a new rule, but has some problems. She wants her rule to assign work items to the user that transitions them into in progress and set the fixed version. If there aren't any subtasks, she wants to send an email reminding each reporter to add them. If there are subtasks, she wants the rule to edit their due dates. Holy moly, this is complex. Let's troubleshoot this rule. Check if the rule is enabled. Tara opens up the automation page and sees that the rule is enabled. And we can tell this rule is enabled by the little green mark here. Check the audit log. The audit log shows no actions performed or some errors next to several entries. So no action performed means that it never got triggered. And some errors mean that it did get triggered, but it didn't work correctly. This is a good one. Copy the rule. I think, again, if you don't have backups you don't have Revyz backups for Jira, right? You end up going down a rabbit hole, and like 60 rabbit holes later, you're so far into it that you're like, I just want to go back to what I had. And this, my friends, is why Git is such an amazing feature and capability that was introduced to the coding community.
Yeah.
You can always just go back. Examine your trigger, right? Especially if you're getting the no action performed. Like, what's going on? Like, how come you're not even getting in? Like, why is it not getting picked up? And then I would say break it down, right? Examine the assignee, right? Maybe the assignee doesn't have the right permission. Maybe the global permission of assignee is not working. There's so many problems there. And so check each one individually is basically what this is telling you. I don't know what the answer was, but let's see what we learned. Dilara wants to understand how often her project's automation rules run. Where can she find this information? So the usage tab, right? Oh, or this is a multiple choice one. So I don't know what the hell control chart is, so I will not go to that one. I will not do performance insights either. Dahlia wants to understand how often her project rules automations run. The audit log
would tell her.
With these two. I don't think it's the rule details either. The rule details just tells you like the name and the actor.
No. Now, this is an important point.
Performance insights. The hell's the performance insights?
That's a good question.
Where do you find performance insights?
I mean, I see usage.
Why did Atlassian have to get rid of GG?
Does the dot still work?
They got rid of GG. The dot still works. What the hell's performance insights? I hope this is not a... Who the hell's going to go all the way over here?
And again, we're setting for the 620, which is a project admin view.
Okay, so over here, under automation, in here, you have performance insights, which is not something that the project admin would have. So, wow. Okay, I've never been here before. So that's why I got that one wrong. There you go, folks. You heard it here first. There's a performance log. When Mateo triggers a particular manual rule, it performs all of the actions, but when Victor triggers it, it does not. What's the possible reason? Victor does not have the necessary project permissions, maybe?
That'd be my guess.
Yep. Yay. And in 15 minutes, can we do the next one? Create Jira automation rules for developer productivity. So this is probably the most common use case for automation rules is going to be these developer ones. But you can make an automation rule for everything or anything. Rodney says, I thought no action performed meant the rule ran, but you know what? You are right, Rodney. Well, kind of. So what does no action perform mean, Rodney?
I'm assuming you're talking to Nist and not Estrada.
No, I'm talking to you because I think no action perform means that the trigger does trigger then.
Yeah.
Because if it didn't trigger at all, then nothing at all would be logged.
So yeah, it means the trigger hit,
but then the condition definitely did not
or some
meet.
subset of conditions happened,
Yeah.
so it didn't run.
Ronnie, you want to join? You should just join us. You should be an expert on here. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We're gonna offer up a retraction.
So that being said, Rodney, if you do join, we're going to have to start going by last names.
You're just the Jira guy. Rodney should be the other Jira guy.
Actually, my my personal YouTube account is just called also the Jira guy.
Rodney should be the Jira guy.
That's my main account. My brand account is the Jira guy, and then my alternate account's also the Jira guy.
I'll ask my people to reach out to your people. Ronnie, were you at team? You're one person I would like to meet in person. And apologies if we've actually met. Okay. So auto assign work. At least I'm glad somebody's paying attention to what the heck we say. I sometimes feel like you and I are just talking to each other. You didn't catch it.
No.
All right. Your team has a backlog of tasks that anyone can work on. Rather than manually select the work, you can use automation to automatically distribute your work the work to your team. So here's a trigger. Depending on how you want to distribute your work, you can use several different triggers. For example, when the work item is created, or you can schedule it. Condition. You may not need conditions for this rule. If you may not need. Okay, if you do not want all work created in your project to be assigned, you can use the work items field condition to ensure that new work item has certain values, or you can use the else if. Okay, the action. Use the assignee work item. Wow, this is like they overcomplicated this. Let's just look at the picture. Here we go. When an item is created, assign it to somebody. This one's interesting. Have you seen these automation things? These are kind of cool. I don't know if you have these in your antiquated data center world.
Hey, we were the first to have this stuff, so I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, well, you're not the first one anymore. So there's like, let's do an action here to assign. What's kind of cool is like you can you have a whole bunch, right? So you don't have to just assign it to a specific user, but you can go to a user in a group. And what's also kind of cool is like if you put it into a group, you can either like some algorithm is going to like in a balanced manner, make sure that everybody's getting equal assignments, or it'll just round robin, so it'll go in a circle, or it'll just randomly pick a person based on a group. But as you can see, there's like a list that we can create. I don't know where you would put the list. I guess you create it down here up to 500 people. That's cool. Your on-call responders, if you have an on-call team with JSM, you can do that too. Another field value. So this is kind of cool. Like you can go grab it from another field. So lots of cool things that you can do here. Automatically create subtasks. You may have a task with a set of subtasks for your team uses frequently, like testing your code, unit tests, and all that. So you can do a manual trigger, although you can really do whatever trigger you want. Conditions are less important because the choose is going to select. Okay, this is not helpful. Let's look at the example. I just look at that. So whenever you hit the button, if summary contains documents from current work item, then create the 3 subtasks. Else, if it contains deploy, create these 4 subtasks. So this is an interesting one.
I will add a caveat to this one, and it's a little bit of tangent. When I was first working with automation for Jira, way back in the olden times, as Alex likes to call it,
to just automation rules.
Yeah, it's what became automation rules. So same setup. I had a manager who wants to set up the create subtasks, but they went way too far. It was for deploying servers, and they wanted to go to level turn screw 5A 5 times clockwise. That level of detail with subtasks, and it was just like such 120 subtasks they wanted to create off a single automation rule per epic they ran. And I had to put my foot down on that one, going, some of this needs to be documentation and Confluence, and you need to trust your team more. Otherwise, why did you hire them?
Yep, very well said. Let's look at another one. Automatically trigger actions in Jira from integration. So webhooks, this is kind of where I start to draw lines in the sand, because once you get into webhooks, that's new territory that I don't want to do. So let's look at the example here. So we have some sort of an incoming webhook and from this private API, and then it does something. So these are very, very, very unique, like very edge casey. Like I rarely do a webhook one, but I know the inner coders in your team, they're gonna be all over these webhooks. Tushar says, how can we create a parent-child relationship using automation? I need to create epics and stories under the initiative automatically. Oh boy. I believe you
If I
have
remember right, when you do a create item, it is one of the fields you get define, and you just use the smart value.
Yeah. So I think I would do this. You can let me see if this is possible. I think you can do, yeah, I think you can set the parent, and then you can set your parent to be the trigger work item or the current work item, right? Whatever way you want to go. So this is where you got to know which dimension you're in on those branches, because if you created if you're an app, what does he want?
He has the initiative. He wants to create the epics and stories. So first he has to create the epic with that parent field. He has to branch to that epic and then create the stories.
Yeah. And then use that parent field to know whether your parent is that trigger or your current. Like,
yeah, you want to use current work item for both levels.
Right. So it's possible. You have your parent there. And I feel like there's an easy way to do that too, though. But and when in
what
doubt,
I used to do was again back in the olden days, Alex like talked about when all we had was epic and epic link. I would set epic link equal to smart value of the current work item.
Well, here's what I do nowadays. I don't even I don't even entertain the problems anymore. I go here.
You just have it all done in the workflow?
No, I have automation rules created for me. I need to create an epic and stories under you know what? I need to create an epic under an initiative. See what it tells me.
It's probably going to be something along the lines of what's an initiative?
This is so not useful. And this, my friends, is why I'm not that result right there is why I know that AI is never going to replace my job. Oh man. I think there's a way to do this through a template that they may or may not have out here.
I won't be surprised if it's not a template.
I feel like this, like I've done it. I just can't remember how to do it, but I'm pretty sure you edit that parent field there.
That parent field is how I do it currently.
Yeah.
And then again, just branch so you can then create your stories underneath that epic.
Okay. Edgar wants to create a rule that automatically distributes his work for his team. Which of this following is not true? Okay. Making easy on us, guys. So the rule will always include a condition. I don't know that that's true. That could be true. The rule can distribute work based on a balanced workload. That's true. The rule can assign work based on a schedule. Yeah. The on-call schedule. The rule can use the assign work item action. All right, so I guess the rule, this is the not true because you don't always need a condition.
Yeah.
You can just run. All right, that was easy. All
We
right.
got a question before we move on. How to block subtasks being created directly under an epic, which breaks our hierarchy of epic story subtask.
Dude, I will tell you, Karen, that create in the cloud, at least creating a subtask under an epic is really hard to do.
Yeah.
You can do it, but it's not something that the UI lets you do. Can you, through our automation rule, can you do that?
You can through an automation rule, or you used to be able to. I won't say you still can. I haven't tried it in a couple of years.
Let's do a manual. And let's create an issue of the type. Same project, but we're going to make it a subtask. Turn on the rule. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to go to my project. What project did I do this one? Platform? Okay.
Let's break Jira.
I'm going to open up an epic. Okay, too many issues. Great, thank you. That's helpful. Let's get to an epic. Here's an epic. Plat number 1. I have children, but apparently I have 500 children. What the hell is this? This is, by the way, what Atlassian gives you out of the box. Cloud. Okay, there's too many. Okay, whatever. Let me hit the button and let me see if it gives me a subtask. Because then it wouldn't be a child issue. It would be subtask. It would be its own separate section for subtasks. Yeah. Let's see what it says.
We might have to go back to the audit log.
I'm hoping it failed. That would be best case scenario because it shouldn't. I don't know that you can, Karen. I don't know that it's supposed to let you skip. Yeah, we have an error. Yeah, so you can't do that. So that's good. So you can't blindly create the thing. So that's awesome. But then, like, you can't. The only way that I know to create a subtask under an epic is if you create a story and then you move the story to become or convert the story to be a subtask, and then tell the parent to be the epic. And that's the only way that I've seen it happen. But natively, you like when you add a child, it's going to be a story. It's not going to be a subtask. Jira won't let you skip the hierarchy. There is a way, though. I've done it in the past, but you got to go through hoops. At that point, you should slap somebody's wrist. All right, Ronnie, I think we're at a good stopping point here. Where are we at? Oh, shoot. Too far back. Too far. Okay, so when we come back, we're here. Too far back. Okay. We got 3 modules left. So we'll finish these up on Tuesday next week. And make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check out Revyz down in the description below. And let's ask some questions here. So it should be like when an initiative is created in the project, 1 epic should be created and linked to this initiative, and also 5 stories. So if you're gonna do that, I would recommend the cascading automation rule or do that branching thing, because to me the cascading is gonna be way easier to do, because you can do this thing where you can do like a most recently created work item and then create more stories. But I would honestly break it up into 2 automation rules: 1 to create the epic, and then another one that says, okay, as soon as the epic is created, add these 5 tasks to that epic as well. And make sure you don't forget to check the checkbox to do the cascading automation rules. All right, Ronnie. See you in a couple of hours to celebrate. Come back at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern, to celebrate our 2nd birthday of the Jira Life. And make sure you subscribe to the channel. We are almost at 2,000 subscribers, so help us get there. Bye.
Bye.